my heart would start pounding. I start sweating. I start yelling at my wife and dog for no reason.
The dude couldn't play, and that was simple as that. But we knew that 2 years ago. The dude couldn't.
Isn't like proficient and like he isn't on his game, you can't start him week 1.
If you earn the spot and you're the better player, your ass should be playing. Period.
I would have it Carlton Davis on one side and Terrion Arnold on the other.
And welcome to the Detroit Lions News Show, your number one source for Detroit Lions news. And here we have a big host of panels, expert NFL two-time head trainer of the year. We have Orm's Forum, Mark Orm, and Joe Chat. How's it going, fellas? I'm the producer. Please leave your comments. This is a live interactive show. I'm going to go behind the glass, and Joe is the host today. Take it away.
What's up, everybody? This is going to be a good podcast right here, the Detroit Lions News Show. We got Ted Rath and Mark Orm here, so we got a lot to divulge into because we didn't even know about this whole suspension thing. We don't even know if it's a real suspension yet. But Ted is here, and he could tell us a little bit about like some of the things that could be the particulars that we don't even know about it. He could also talk about the Aiden Hutchinson injury, about how long it could potentially take for him to get back, and then we'll do some other discussions. But just if you have any comments, leave them below. But it's good to be with you guys.
Yeah, Joe, I think the first thing you look at from a suspension standpoint, we have a couple significant things. As I got an alarm going off in here. Sorry about that. So when you look at the NFL, there's a very specific pattern, and it's like this with elite sport, Olympic level sports, other major sports leagues. It's the same thing. So there's certain banned substances. The safest route to go, we tell all of our players this, so there's an educational process when you get a player, especially a newer player, a younger player, like a JMO. So you see a guy, they walk in, you say, listen, your safest bet is going to be an NSF product. So that is a third-party testing process. They go through this third-party testing. The companies pay for this, who develop these products, and it's your best bet to have a safe product. They will stamp their seal of approval. It says NSF on the supplement. This is good for anyone who has high school, teenagers, kids taking supplements, same thing. But I think the thing to realize is there has to be the education. Therefore, there has to be this communication within the team environment. So traditionally, you're going to look at either the strength and conditioning coach, the dietitian, the RD, or sometimes an athletic trainer, a member of the sports medicine staff. Someone within that department is going to be targeted as the main source of, hey, if you have questions, you have supplements, go see this person, run it by them. There's even apps that you can pull up on your phone that will scan supplements and tell you if they're third-party tested. So I think that's the big thing to keep in mind. Now, I don't want to speculate. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I don't know if the news has hit, if they've came out and said, hey, it was this banned substance, whatever it was. But there's ADD medication. There's things like that can also pop positive for a test. You have to keep that in mind. But in general, there should be an educational process for each player as they go through. And then once again, it's traditionally within the realm of the performance department. So it would be in future roles, myself, I would oversee the dietitian departments, the RDs, the sports, those things. So from a performance standpoint, that player has to know that he can come trust you, ask good questions, and then you can give them the education and the knowledge that they need, and so that they can go make the best decision. Because unfortunately, if you just take a supplement and it could be a family friend who recommends something, that can get you in a bad place, because it can put you in hot water if you're not safe and if you're not careful in going through these checks and balances.
You know what's the funny thing is, like, when this suspension came out, what you just said is kind of what I kind of interpreted from someone I know. I had a friend, he played in the NFL he played for a couple years, but one of the things that he got popped for, because he texted me right after this happened, because he was like, I got popped for the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I do remember you getting a 2-game suspension, but bygones be bygones. But so what it ended up being is, what he told me was he took Sudafed, because he had a sinus infection, and he didn't alert the medical staff, and he didn't alert what they were doing. And next thing you know, he's popping a positive on a PES. So that's kind of like what you just said is probably, it's not, we don't know what it is. We're not going to speculate because it's irresponsible to speculate. But at the same time, it's like something that you should know as a pro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and once again, great communication is where it starts, because if you're a player, you have to go through your due diligence and you have to communicate, because if you're taking an over-the-counter medication, the first thing I'm going to do is take it into the team, get it checked, get it tested, get it verified, just say, hey, I'm taking this medication. Even if you had recent surgery and you're prescribed something, if you didn't go through the team, which you should, and you have to contractually, you have to make sure that they are aware that you're taking whatever it is, this painkiller, this certain medication, because that can also pop positive. So yeah, it's communication, and it goes both ways. The team has to do a good job, similar to the gambling policies. The team has to make sure that they're educating the players, but then the players also have a responsibility to communicate back to the team. So I think it's important on both ends there.
You got a comment, Mark?
Yeah, well, like that's how I kind of look at it too. I think it's the lack of communication from both parties. The organization itself, JMO kind of like, just not like reaching out to someone just in case he doesn't know if he should take something. This is the second time for JMO. We talk about these incidents. The gambling. It was a stupid penalty. He didn't know he was outside the facility in a hotel, and then now with this being a 2-gamer, it's one of the lesser penalties per se. Like a diuretic, a masking agent, whatever it was he took. Like Joe said, we can't speculate on what he took, but it just seems like he's not, it's a little bit of ignorance on his part. Like you have to know what you're putting into your body. Like this is his livelihood. He's not only hurting himself, he's hurting the team. I'm not going to come on here and say stuff like, well, he needs to go, he needs to be traded or anything like that. But, he just keeps getting popped for these little minor incident things. But, he's missing games because of it. And I just think it's a lack of communication on both sides. He needs to know what he's putting in his body, bottom line. And if he has questions, it's 2024. Like I said in my video, I just made a video about this yesterday. I'm like, this is 2024. It's not 1957, man. You can get a hold of somebody just like that and just find out, you know what I mean? And like Ted said too, that you can scan stuff now and find out if it's on the list or if it's not on the list or if it's safe from that organization. So communication is key. He just needs to be on top of things. We don't even know if he's even going to be suspended for the 2 games now. Adam Schefter came out and said there's a possibility that they're going to appeal. It might not even happen. So I don't even know what's really going on with this, but hopefully it gets brushed aside and hopefully he just learns from this.
Yeah, the whole situation is weird. I mean, in many facets. I mean, you look at it like, first of all, like the first part of it is weird because it came out from an ESPN report, but it didn't come out from Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter reposted Eric Woodyard's report. But what I've been told about the whole thing, I know the Lions for a fact, like they had the protocol for the Lions, what I've been told, because I know the person, whatever. But what I've been told, the protocol is that you scan it or you take a picture of it, and they'll kind of look it up and see if it's suitable. And I don't know if Ted, is there kind of what's the protocol if you're trying to figure out if something's a stimulant that you could take or a prescription or something along that lines? Is there what kind of protocol is there specifically that you kind of imagine?
Yeah, first, the NFL does a good job. So the NFL is constantly sending out memos and educational material, and they'll typically send that. That's going to go out in an email chain. Traditionally on that email, there's going to be general managers, head coaches. Then it's going to be the athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach, registered dietitian, sports dietitian. So that group of people, then it's their responsibility. There's no set call to where all 32 teams have to communicate this way. So then it falls on the team's responsibility end where they have to say, I'm going to communicate this. Ted, you go tell all the players, here's the policy. They take a text and they'll send it to you and they'll take a picture and you scan it and then you tell them yes or no. But like I said, Joe, I think the easiest way to do this, it should be third-party tested. The NFL Players Association does a good job, and they also try to educate their players because obviously they have a lot at stake, and they tell them the same thing. NSF, that's certified for sport, this is the safe guardrail. So if you see that on a product, you can feel safe taking it. If you do not see that, the supplement industry is very unregulated. So if you're just going, even if you're going to GNC or a well-known reputable store and taking a product from there, if it's not third-party tested, you are literally taking your hands are tied, because whatever's in that product does not have to be labeled on the ingredient label. It is a completely unstructured setting, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So there's a reason that these companies get away with that. That's how they're making money.
That's a good point. I mean, if anybody's watching us and they do workouts or whatever the case may be, that's something that you should really take kind of like, that should be something that should be clipped if Darcy wants to do it, because I think that's a really good point. I mean, like if it's not NSF approved, I mean, you don't know what's in it. That's the bottom line. So that's kind of what I go to. I know that there's other ways that this could happen, but these things are, this protocol that they have with, like you said, the NFL is pretty thorough. And like Mark said, this is the second time it's happened. It's going to be interesting what happens when, they do accept that option, extend him for another year. And what do they do after that? That's the question, because if you're going to hand this guy $20 million, I mean, he's got to be a lot smarter than that. So the next question I'm curious to hear your answer, because pre-show we were talking and you said something about Aiden Hutchinson, and you said about the way that he can come back a little bit earlier. Now, I know that it's 4 to 6 months, because I actually broke my thing. I actually broke my head too. So, but it varies from person to person. But the one thing I think that kind of helps Aiden Hutchinson, I think you can agree to this, is that being young as he is. That's kind of what I see. And then you have some other particulars how he can get back on the field quicker.
Yeah, first and foremost, you look at who is the person. So you look at a guy like Hutch, he is literally, I would call him a model citizen. So when you look at it, what's the characteristics that make up an ideal NFL player? And these are guys like Calvin Johnson, Aaron Donald, the guys that I've been around that you look at him, you're like, this guy should be a Hall of Famer. I see a lot of those same similarities in a guy like Hutch, because he shows up, and I know people in that building still, he shows up, does the extra work. He does literally everything right, and then he goes above and beyond of that. So for him, number one, it is a typical 4 to 6 month injury. You look at it, it was a clean break. Once you get, there's a 3-day window. It's about a 72-hour window. The first fear, because it's such a significant injury, is compartment syndrome. You want to get out of that because there's so much inflammation in that area of the body. You don't want to stress the muscle tissue and all these things that could have long-standing repercussions. You have to get past that first. They got through that window. Then you look at infections. That's the next thing that can get you, because that significantly sets back the timeline. It appears that they've gotten through that. So all things being equal, it looks like he's on progress to be exactly where he should be right now. Then you go to those intangibles that I just mentioned. How is this person going to attack rehab? Knowing Hutch and how he is, he's going to show up. He's going to do all the work the right way. When he goes home, he's going to do the stuff at home that you ask him to do. So this is a 24/7 type of rehab, because whether it's just wound healing, whether it's putting bone stem, all these things that you can do, there's hyperbaric treatments that you can do that can increase and enhance bone healing. So there's all these tools and things that are available to us because technology is so great. He's the type of guy that's going to maximize those things. So I'm not going to say, can he be back earlier? Can he be back at the start of the playoffs? I don't know. I do think that's probably unrealistic. And I do know the Lions are going to look at this as a long-term. I know Brad, I know Dan Campbell, those guys, they don't want to put this kid at risk. No one does. And the kid shouldn't want that either. So I think they're going to be safe. They're going to be smart. But when you look at all those factors, he has a lot going for him that could potentially help him maximize this rehab and be ready to go as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I know you can't speak in particulars because medical, you really don't speak in particulars at all. So it's kind of varies from situation to situation. So that is interesting to know how some of these things can perhaps speed the process up. But you're right, the Detroit Lions are probably going to think of this as like a more long-term view of how this thing is going to go. I would imagine. I don't think that they're going to really put him back out there. But Mark, what do you think is a realistic timeline? I mean, you're not a doctor like I ain't a doctor, so
yeah, they were not doctors on here. I know. I'm reading what everybody else is reading, 4 to 6. You know, there's a possibility for a 3-month, like Ted says. You know, there's a guy in Aiden Hutchinson that, you know, he's literally part mutant. You know what I mean? The man is an alien. He's a different breed. His drive is like no other. He's young. He's got youth on his side. He's got that work ethic on his side. He's taken care of. He's doing all the right things, like Ted said. He's a guy that's going to hit this thing head on at 1,000%. So I don't expect him back, you know, for the playoffs or Super Bowl, like, you know, people are trying to say, or anything like that. I'm not talking Super Bowl or anything, but if we do happen to make it to deep into the playoffs, I don't expect him to be available for the Detroit Lions. But they're looking at this as a kind of a long-term thing. Makes sense, you know. He'll be ready down the road, 2025. It is what I'm looking at, and I'm hearing that, like, the break itself, like the tibia break, whatever it was a complete clean break. From what I'm hearing, it was a clean break, no nerve damage, no piercing of the skin. So that's really a bonus to hear that as well.
You know, I got something to ask Ted, because I didn't even bring this up in the pre-show or nothing, but I think it's an interesting thing. In San Francisco, there's a guy, Deebo Samuel. How the hell did he get on the football field knowing that? Well, we didn't know he had pneumonia, but how did he get in? How did he even get on the field and start playing with fluid in his lung? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I think we all take for granted, and I've been around these guys at a high level for almost 2 decades. They are freaks of nature. Mark just hit on it. You just take a guy like Hutch, and Aiden is that guy, but they all are. If you are on a 53-man roster, if you're on a 90-man roster in the offseason, you are literally the most elite of the most elite in the world. And I think the physical and the mental toughness that most of our guys display that play in the NFL, we take it for granted because they make it look so easy. But these guys shrug off stuff, man. It's 100% injury sport. Whether the severity is great and you just broke your tibia and your fibula, or you're just dealing with a common cold, you're just showing up to work and you're going back and you're saying, my team needs me. I'm going to show up and be the best version of myself. So you look at those guys like Deebo, they all exhibit those same qualities. I guarantee out of 32 teams right now, you have a number of guys on every team. It's cold and flu season coming up. Guys that aren't feeling well, they just feel a little bit under the weather. They're not going to the great lengths oh, is this pneumonia? Is this a symptom? They're just showing up and going to work, and then they're trying to do the best that they can. But they are incredibly tough, and I think that's more than anything a lot of credit to these guys. But that's why medical staffs are in place, and you have these safe failure nets to where you can protect guys from themselves sometimes, because they all need that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I was watching the game, and I was like, and then they said he was going to rush to the hospital because he had pneumonia. Mm-hmm. I was like, how does that happen? Because, like, usually you kind of know, but you're right. They do shrug off a lot of stuff. Like, you know, we see with Tua right now, which is another topic of conversation. But sometimes these guys are shrugging off stuff that is, like, very, very serious, and they don't even realize it till, like, the very end of it. And that's kind of like, okay. But that was kind of something I never heard before. I never heard that before. Have you heard it, Mark?
No, I've never heard anything like that before, man. You know, I play with some pretty tough guys, you know, like over the years, like sports, they're just in general, never at that level or anything like that. But, you know, a guy walking into the locker room, man, if, you know, with fluid in his lungs, pneumonia, and just trying to get out there and just be with his boys, man. He's, you know, that's his livelihood. That's his job, you know, and that's just nothing but a team effort right there. And he gave it his effort. He gave it his all. He gave it 1,000%. And he just couldn't do it. So, but like you said, these guys are built different, man. They're not built like the normal guys, man. These professional athletes, man, they just take care of business, man. And it's balls to the wall 24/7. And he was just trying to go out there and just prove he could play, and he just couldn't do it.
It was funny because when Frank Ragnow partially tore his pec, they said partially.
Yeah, there's another mutant too.
Yeah, that's another guy. It's like so. Jared Goff was on 97.1 Ticket. He was like, this guy came back to the huddle and says, "I think I tore my pec." And Goff is like, "Bro, do you want to like go off? Like, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good." I'm like, you know, if any other person gets a partially torn pec, I'm pretty sure they're on the ground, pretty much crying. But not, you know, that's another mutant. So what Ted said is exactly, I think, what it was. Like, I was just stunned that that actually happened. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like kind of stunned because I'm like, you you kind of would feel that when you start moving and start breathing heavy. But you're right. It's kind of like the people that get in car accidents or whatever, and they don't feel anything until they're like, "Oh, my leg's broken" or something. It's like what's it called? The adrenaline.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Adrenaline.
So yeah.
Joe, I've seen guys literally lacerate livers in games. I've seen broken ribs and guys just keep playing. And you see, it is like a car crash. And once again, I cannot give enough credit to the guys, just the average NFL player, the amount of mental and physical toughness that they display. And that's just game day that everybody sees. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. The rest of the week, they're going through a grind and they're doing uncomfortable things. They're putting their bodies through really, really uncomfortable situations just to get to that point. So they're tough, man. You cannot discredit that. These guys are tough individuals.
Yeah, there's another thing I wanted to talk about. I don't know how this is the Tua situation. I'm trying to figure this out. So I know concussions are like a silly, they're like a very particular topic about like certain people, right? But like, there was a question asked on like Moving the Change on the Sirius XM radio, like, what's the protocol for concussions that someone that's had like multiple concussions? Is there a protocol for that, or does the NFL try to like not stay out of, but they can't police like the guys like that are on the roster? They can't say, "Oh, you can't play no more," because that's what some people think that they could do.
The NFL, in my opinion, has done a great job. I think when you look at number one, concussion rates have gone down. They've protected players. They've done a good job. In what you're seeing now, players are not as hesitant to report it. You still might have some of that, once again, going back to protecting them from themselves. But the NFL has set up all of these safety nets to where they can go in and say, all right, here is the clear-cut progression. You're in the concussion evaluation protocol. Got it. You go right to the blue tent. If you go past that, you're going to the locker room. They are going to completely get you out of the lights, out of the noise, out of everything. You're going to go to the enhanced protocol. Then if you don't pass, you're immediately pulled. They do not mess around with that. And then once you're out of that, then you go through the weekly progression of, all right, now you check with an independent neurologist. So this is a completely separate neurologist that is not employed by the NFL, by the team. This is a doctor who's taken their medical oath, who owes it to the patient, in this case, the player, to protect them. That's all that they care about. That's based on their medical oath. They're protecting the player as a person, not as an NFL player, not as their fantasy player, whatever the situation. It's just the person. And then they have to get signed off by multiple checkpoints to be eligible to come back. Tua has clearly done that. And I think, do they look at it significantly? Yes, they look at your past. They look at your history, because if you're a neurologist and you're the guy checking on Tua, you're clearly going to look at his medical history, just like you would any other player who maybe sustained his first concussion of his career. You're going to look at the medical history, and you're going to look at the past, and you're going to take that into account. And I think that's why, I mean, they immediately, for the most part, put him on IR. So they shelved him for a number of weeks. And then you look at it, I don't feel like it was rushed. And I also feel like Tua, you know, he got up there and said in his presser what he said today. He said he's going. So I think you look at it with those terms, that there is a setting in place by the NFL to protect the players. And I think they're doing the best that they can. And I think they're always going to look for ways to improve. But for this situation, I feel like they've went through the checks and the balances. The independent neurologist signed off on it, and Tua feels good with it. I think it's a case-by-case situation to where he has to make the decision as an individual, and that's him and his family's discussion. That's what they have to determine what the right thing to do is.
Yeah, it's just always interesting when they pull a guy from the game, like, and then he comes back in the game, like after the test or whatever. It's crazy. Like, the whole thing is like, I know they have a good process in there and everything. It's like, it's just like, it's hard for the normal fan to like kind of like understand the whole process of the concussion thing, because I think they just think like, oh, they go in there, they just say this, the blah blah blah. They're like, it's like, oh, they're done. I think you're right. Like what you said, like they got a good protocol going. They can't do everything to help. You know, they can't do everything to stop it. But I think they're doing the best they can, and that's exactly what that's the only thing that you can do, to be honest.
Well, and Joe, I think what's cool, there's multiple checkpoints in place throughout the stadium. You have independent spotters that are upstairs You have an independent neurologist on the sideline. Once again, these are people not employed by the team. So you take any prejudice out of it. But then they've empowered every employee within the NFL. That includes strength coaches. That includes medical personnel. That includes officials on the field. Officials can call and they can get a player. I've done this. I've walked up and said, hey, this guy's messed up. Let's go get him evaluated. And I've seen players do it. I've seen coaches do it. I've seen officials do it. It's a beautiful thing because, once again, great communication is great collaboration. When you empower everybody that's on the field and maybe see something that someone else might not see or the cameras might not pick up, that's critical because it's that first step. And once again, the players might not, if they are concussed, they're not thinking clearly. They're just going to keep playing, and we're trying to protect them from that second impact syndrome, which is a huge critical variable of protecting from that long-term brain damage. So I think the NFL is doing everything that they can. We're going to continue to do everything we can because it's an important area, and we want to protect the athletes.
I got a quick question for Ted, if you don't mind, Joe.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
About the concussions, like they're doing, I love the way you talk, man. This information that you're giving out to people is excellent. I really appreciate it.
Same.
No, I really do. It's good to learn this kind of stuff. My kind of question at you is, I know when Tua just had his presser, he just had a presser. It was either today or yesterday. I think it was today. I'm not 100% sure, but he was asked the question right away. He go, "Are you going to wear a Guardian cap?" And he came out right away and went, "Boom, nope, I'm not going to do it." Do you think this Guardian cap is like, I know it's not a fix. But it should be an aid, right? So what do you think about the Guardian cap? Do you think more players should wear it, especially a guy like Tua?
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the kind words, Mark. And first of all, the early signs and the early data show that they are productive in preventing and lessening concussion-based symptoms. So what they've done in training camp, if you followed this, they started basically experimentally. They said, all right, put it on offensive linemen and defensive linemen because we know it's those subconcussive contacts. It's not the 100-mile-an-hour hit where you go head-to-head. That clearly is going to damage something. But it's those repetitive subconcussive hits, bang, bang, and you do that hundreds of times through a practice or through a game. So that's where they initially thought, okay, let's try to help the big guys, the O-line, the D-line. Great. And then they realized, oh, this helps them, but why wouldn't we put it on our linebackers, on our running backs, and our tight ends, those inline guys who are also sustaining multiple layers of contact, both big hits, both dramatic acute shots, but also those subconcussive ones that are going to cumulatively add up to overexposure. So what they've done is they added on to the players that had to wear it through training camp, and they found positive data. So yes, I think it works. Now, Tua, number one, it's a personal choice because the rules aren't in place that force every player to wear them. The first thing that I would think of, I never played in the NFL, but I played in college. I played Division I college football. Anything that you would put on me additionally that was not my normal gear, I'm going to feel. If you put a weighted thing on my head, I'm going to feel that. It's going to slow my reaction time. I'm just going to think as an athlete through that. So I'm trying to put myself in Tua's shoes. But then I'm also going to think about this from my experience and my profession. Would I say wear it? I would say if it's showing positive correlations to reduction of concussion, then it's worth exploring and seriously consider wearing it. Absolutely. But I can't make that choice for him. Once again, he's got to talk to his family. He's got to think, is this going to impact my game? But is it at the detriment to my health? He has to ask himself all those questions. And I'm sure he did. He's a smart kid. He's a great kid from everything that I've heard and being around him a little bit. So I think he's done all those things. But I do, once again, the NFL is in line. They're taking steps to make sure that we're protecting players and doing a better job.
That's a good comment on the Guardian cap, Mark. I was interested with that too because, they say it in training, they do it in training camp, but I'm starting to see a little bit more of those guys wear it in games. Like I think Taylor Rapp of the Buffalo Bills was wearing one. I know there's a guy in the Colts that was wearing one.
Jonathan Taylor, the running back, he was wearing one.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor. So, I mean, it's going to start catching on, especially since they have that cap that goes over the Guardian cap that matches the helmet. So, it's very interesting that that's actually like an aid to kind of help it out. Obviously, you're not going to prohibit every concussion that's going to come about, but it does help, you know what I'm saying, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So, Mark, you got anything that you're trying to ask?
No, just nothing right now. It just all depends what the topic is. What do you guys think about this Tennessee Titans game coming up?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that next. I was just asking if you had any questions for him like that, like medically. That'd be cool. But we got him on. So I'm just trying to figure out like every question that I have. I'm trying to be like, well, we got the guy to talk to. So I'm just like, all right, cool. But yeah, we got this Tennessee game coming up. Tennessee's my second favorite team, to be honest. So it's a little bit, it's tough. I think Tennessee sucks. So that's what I think. So I told Ted, I told Mark this, like they are Will Levis, Mason Rudolph, same quarterback, just different package. It's just ridiculous. But they got no DeAndre Hopkins. It's funny that Ernest Jones gets traded again the week that he plays the Lions again because he got traded. Remember, he got traded from LA to Tennessee, and then he got traded from Tennessee to Seattle. So it's like this guy is getting prepped for Detroit, and he's like, "Nope, you're on the plane, going to somewhere else." And it's like, it's you usually don't see those kind of trades where like because it was a player and a pick, and then it was obviously Ernest Jones with Seattle, but it was Jerome Baker and I think like a 5th round pick. You usually don't see that with these players come back. But what do you think about the game coming up, Mark?
Yeah, it's the Tennessee Titans. They're 1-5. They're one of the weaker teams. I'm not gonna look at this game like it's a trap game. Some people out there going, "Oh, be careful, the Titans might pull one on us." I think we'll steadily handle these guys at Ford Field. This is a home game. We kind of have a tough road stretch the last 5-6 games. Finally we're back home. Then we're back on the road again for 2 more games. So I think this is a game where they do play some tough defense. They're not bad defensively. They got a couple weapons on offense. Their quarterback situation is messed up. I completely forgot that Mason Rudolph was their backup. No disrespect, but I forgot who their backup was. Behind Will Levis, and the Calvin Ridley's there. He hasn't done much this year. Tony Pollard was an off-season addition from the Cowboys, who's actually not having a bad season. If you want to look at it like that from a fantasy football point of view, he's helping me out on a couple teams, anyways. Tony Pollard, but we handle the run pretty good, and possibly no JMO for us. So, but like I think this team, the Lions, I think they're built for greatness right now, and I think they're going to walk all over the Titans. Like, to be honest, I think it could possibly be a 4-touchdown win.
What do you think, Ted?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything Mark said. I do think that there's a component here. Their defense is playing pretty well. Their defense coordinator, Denard Wilson, he's a good friend of mine. I've been with him in Philly, just missed him in LA. So he knows Jared Goff. He was with Jared Goff for 2016 when he was with the LA Rams when they drafted Jared. So Denard is a phenomenal coach. He gets the players to play for him. They want to buy into him. Tracy Rocker, the D-line coach, does a good job. I think the front, they're going to try to pressure Jared, if I had to guess. I think they're going to try to stay in the game. Sometimes the home crowd in Detroit's going to be real. You guys know. I mean, it's going to be loud. It's going to be rocking at Ford Field. But sometimes as the opponent, you come into that environment, you kind of feed off of that a little bit. So if they can get sparks going, if they can get going a little bit on defense, I think that keeps momentum. Now, on the offensive side, different story. They just traded Hop. They have nothing. They really don't have a lot of weapons. So what are they going to do with Mason Rudolph? If I'm Brian Callahan, you got to go short. You got to establish confidence, short, intermediate routes, get the ball out quick. Don't let that pass rush get after you. AJ is going to be out of his mind. He's going to be putting pressure on him because you're dealing with a backup quarterback with not a lot of weapons to get the ball out to. So how do you counter that from a chess perspective? He's got a dink and dunk. You got to get the ball out. So I'm curious to see. I do think it's going to be a legitimate Lions win. Probably not too close of a game, but I do think their defense, Tennessee's defense, will show up on occasion and give the Lions a little bit of trouble, but nothing that Ben Johnson, nothing that Jared Goff and those guys on the offensive side of the ball cannot handle.
Yeah, I agree with you on the defensive portion because, like, I watch that defense. It's very active on the defensive front with T'Vondre Sweat. Obviously, we all know Jeffrey Simmons is a beast. Their defense has some good pieces, to be honest. L'Jarius Sneed, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, even though they're late in their careers. Offensively, like, I know a lot of people look at the Tennessee Titans and they go, wow, like, the offense is kind of not good. Well, it isn't good, but their offensive line is also not good. That's part of the reason that Will Levis is missing a couple games because, I mean, he didn't help himself when he didn't slide. But it's funny because like what Mark said is true. Tony Pollard's been good for them, but if you have him in fantasy or you put a parlay together when you put Tony Pollard, thank you Tony Pollard for 60 yards at one game. But
yes, sir.
Besides that, their offense is kind of like, I don't know how to put it. They're kind of like soft. Like there's Mason Rudolph. He's a decent backup, but he's not going to be someone that's going to, tear through you like some of the quarterbacks that you face. I mean, you played Dak Prescott, who I think is a decent, top 15 quarterback. You got, guys like you played Baker Mayfield, Matt Stafford. Like this is going to be like a kind of walk in a park in terms of offense. Defensively, I think they are going to challenge them. And the funny thing about this, Detroit's never beat Tennessee since they moved to Tennessee.
Wow. I did not know that.
The most interesting thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And I remember the last game they played, 2016, Marcus Mariota came in as a rookie. And that was the game where Matt Stafford ran over a defender and ironically hurt his arm on the same play, which was not fun, but they've slayed the Dallas Dragon because they didn't beat Dallas since 2012. I mean, they slayed the Seattle Dragon. They didn't beat them since 2012. Now you got one that you haven't beat since they moved to Tennessee from Houston. So I think that's the most interesting stat.
The redemption role continues, man. It's, you know what I mean? The revenge tour.
Breaking the streaks. Yeah. It's funny, man. I can tell you. So we played in Tennessee. This is Jim Schwartz era. And Sean Hill was starting because Stafford was hurt. It was an overtime game. We scored 2 touchdowns with something like 30 seconds left in the game. I got to go back and look at this. We throw a Hail Mary. It's a tip ball to Titus Young. Titus Young dives, catches it to tie the game. We had to get an onside kick, throw a Hail Mary. We put it into overtime. We hold them to a field goal. We're literally driving down. We are on the 1 or 2 yard line, and we're about to go in, and we called in our terminology it was Tundra with Scott Linehan's offense. So we were going to fake it and then just basically try to get him jump off sides. Dom Raiola snaps it, and we get a bumbled snap. We can't and literally lose the game. But I did not realize that they hadn't beaten them since Tennessee, because that was the one that still chaps my butt a little bit when I think about that one. I hate. You remember all the close losses for some reason.
I remember that, bro. I remember that game. You just brought back the PTSD on that one, man. I remember that fumble.
Oh,
I do.
They had a punt return for a touchdown, Mark.
Oh, man.
Yes. They had a punt return for a touchdown. Ben Graham, our big Aussie punter, pulled his hamstring trying to chase the guy down. He was like 45 years old. I love Ben, but I was like, what's happening? And then we lost that way, and I'm like, oh my goodness. That was
you're right, though. It's always the games that you lose close that you're just like, wow, I can't believe that happened. The Lions got a lot of those in their history, so I mean, but it's funny because, like, I don't know, like, the whole stat about him not being, Tennessee since they moved to Tennessee is an ironic stat, but it's funny because, like, I look back at some of the games and I, like, especially during my time that I've been watching the Lions, and I remember every game except the one that you named, which is funny because I remember. I'm like, I think I was trying to forget it, to be honest. But
blocking it out.
Yeah, I think I was trying to forget the 2016 game too, where they played. Matthew Stafford played. And Marcus Mariota came in, and Marcus Mariota, he had a great game. I think he threw for like 323 yards.
Yep. Oh man.
It was a season opener too. So that was the funniest part about that. It was like,
right.
You think it's I think that was the last year at Caldwell too, if I'm not concerned.
That was before they hired Patricia. Yep.
Yeah. So where have you like been on a training staff with? Like, I'm trying to.
So I was with the Lions. I had Schwartz and Caldwell. I was there through 2015.
There we go.
Yep. And then I went to Miami for a year with Adam Gase, another Michigan guy. He's a local Michigan guy. And then went to LA with Sean. So I was there for 3 years and then transitioned to Philly and took on that VP role. Was there for the last 5. So I know a lot of guys. It's funny, man. It's a small league. The more you move around, the more people you know everywhere else.
Yeah, it's funny because I just want to know you. So you were on the same training staff with Jared Goff when he was in LA.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How is he as a leader in your opinion?
I love Jared. I love it. Was who the hell was he on? He was on Rich Eisen. So Dan Campbell was talking about him. He compared him to Drew Brees. I love that comparison. I really love it. Jared is, I think I told Darcy this one time. He's California cool, but in all the good ways. So Jared grew up and he has this cool demeanor where nothing phases him. He can throw an interception, or he can literally take the team on a 98-yard touchdown drive and drop 5 dimes and go 5 for 5. And he's going to come to the sideline in the same way. He's going to be cool, calm, collected. He's going to establish that same confidence in the rest of the team, offensively, defensively. Everyone looks at the quarterback. So when you see that and you see a guy that never overreacts, that establishes a level of confidence, and you get that, and then it grows throughout the team and it permeates. And then you have a guy like Ben Johnson, who's the same. I've worked with Ben, and then a guy like Dan Campbell. You have this structure there. So I believe Jared is the perfect leader at the quarterback position for every piece that they put in place. And Brad Holmes has strategically done this in a very, very smart way. Brad was with us in staff in LA. Brad knew what type of guy Jared was. But there's no happenstance here. Brad knew what he was doing and how he was fitting these pieces, because that's what a general manager has to do. You fit these puzzle pieces, and Jared is perfect. I think he permeates throughout that city. He relates to people in that city. He's a blue-collar guy. He's going to go to work. He's going to be humble. He's going to have a gracious attitude. He is one of my favorite guys. I love Jared. I think he's perfect for that city. I'm so happy he's thriving there.
I just think I'll let you speak in a minute, Mark, but I just think it's interesting because a lot of fans don't get the inside look at what Jared Goff is in a lot of ways, because we don't see what he is in between the locker room and in the locker room and out there, and how he acts on the sidelines, because he doesn't really have like this he doesn't have like a boisterous personality. He has this kind of calm, cool, collected, like you just said, like it's very like you kind of see it with certain type of quarterbacks, and I think it's a good personality to have in a quarterback, in my opinion, that kind of like calm personality, because shit's going to go wrong in the pocket. It's going to go wrong throughout a game. And if you have that same calm personality, I do like that a lot. That's a great tidbit right there.
Well, Joe, look at how he responds to pressure. Like, look at him against pressure rates and how he stands in the pocket and still delivers strikes. It's no different from how he is. Just like you just said beautifully, there's going to be bad things that happen in a game. If you're the quarterback for an NFL franchise, you're going to deal with bad shit constantly because the adversity is coming. And give me the guy who's cool, calm, collected all day, every day, because I want that level of confidence, and I want the rest of the team to be able to point to it and see it. The other thing I'll say about Jared, his emotional intelligence, his awareness, his situational awareness is really, really good. This is a guy that the one example I'll give. We were in LA. We flew our team to Colorado because we were going to play a Mexico game. Long story short, we had wildfires in California, chaos. We chartered another plane to fly our families out to meet us in Colorado. So we're flying back to have the game back in LA because we pulled it from Mexico. Crazy situation. Jared is the guy. It's like 1 a.m. in the morning. Our families and everyone's flying back. The whole team's flying back to Los Angeles, and everyone's exhausted. Jared isn't sleeping. He walks back because our families, our children, my 3 kids were there. He came back to play with the kids in the back of the plane because he knew, he was like, man, some of these kids are probably having a bad flight. This is how this guy thinks. So number one, there's gratitude, there's humility, there's all these great qualities that a leader needs to exhibit. And I think Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, all those guys do it too. You look at those things, but that awareness, that is something that's special. Emotional intelligence is one of the unsung heroes for every leader, and I think Jared demonstrates that really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, you got any comment?
Yeah, like that's great insight on Jared Goff, because like as fans, we don't get to see all that, man. Like, we don't have the luxury of that. Like, I was one of the guys when he came over from the Rams. I didn't like the trade. Because I was a big Stafford slappy. I'm going to admit it. I was a huge Stafford slappy. I still kind of am. I still like Matt Stafford. Never when he's playing us, though. So let's get that straight. I don't want anybody coming at me. But yeah, like I didn't trust him, because he wasn't on a downslide when he left LA, but he kind of had that injury to his hand, his thumb, whatever it was. He had that apparent beef with Sean McVay and all that stuff. And I was like, and this is where quarterbacks and players came to die, was Detroit. Like, they came here to die. And I was like, we're just going to get another, he's a young quarterback, but he's coming here and it's just going to be a disaster. And I was one of those guys that was kind of like, I did not like the trade, but he's completely grown on me. I don't I can't see there's still haters out there to this day, like, and on him that just don't want him as our quarterback. And I just don't understand it. He's done some ridiculous things on the field. And like you say, Ted, like you see all the good stuff off the field. That's awesome. I love hearing that insight. But on the field, man, he's doing things that quarterbacks haven't done in the history of the NFL right now. And it's really fun to watch, man. And I really think that we can win with this guy.
Oh, there's no doubt. And you hit it on the head, Mark. He's playing an MVP caliber season. There's no doubt about it. And I think when you just said that, when he did transition from LA, he hit significant adversity. Again, give me the guy. It's one of my favorite questions. When we would go through the draft process and I'm meeting with incoming rookies, the first question I ask, tell me the worst adversity you've ever been through and how it made you better. I love asking that question because if you've never been through the fire, how are you going to expect to get any better? You don't grow through just a simple ride, a flat road. You grow through the stress. You grow through the dips, the valleys, the mountains. You grow through that stress. And Jared's had no shortage of it. And I think he got ran out of LA. The media, everyone was killing him, saying, oh, they're just dumping this guy here so that they could get Stafford, go win a Super Bowl. And what's the best revenge? If Jared can go win a Super Bowl in Detroit. And that you don't think that he's thinking about that, and you can't win the Super Bowl today. You got to win this week. You got to beat Tennessee. But I know Jared's got that week-by-week mindset because he's got a building full of people that believe in that process. And that's what I love about that kid, man. I love that guy.
Love it.
It's interesting you brought that up about Brad Holmes because before. So this is a funny story. So I got out of scouting school. I was doing it with I did it. Bill Polian was the guy that was the leader of the school, whatever. I was going to get an internship with the LA Rams during the 2020 season, but then COVID hit, so that got squashed. But I was interviewed by Brad Holmes. I didn't even know who Brad Holmes was until this. Which is funny because he became the Lions general manager, and I was like, but he asked this question. I always remember, and that's how I kind of know that he's a smart guy. And when he traded for Jared Goff, I knew there was a just something that he had that was in the way that he was trading for Jared Goff, even with the picks and everything. He asked this question, and it's very like it hits you. You kind of go, I don't know. Do you take the guy that's more talented as a scout, or do you sign off on him, or do you sign off on the more smarter player? And what Ted said just a couple minutes ago about being in the situation awareness and being aware of the circumstances and smarts and talent, like you can't really put like you just said, you can't really put a price on that. That's what I get to.
Yeah, EQ over IQ, Joe. Like that's, and the other thing I'll say about Brad is aggressive. Like Brad, his default setting, and I love using it's urgent. Everything he does is urgent. So when he's thinking about something, he's thinking, all right, when things do go bad, because they're going to go bad, who do I want at the quarterback position? He had seen Jared go through adversity. He had seen Jared go through ups and downs, and how he handled that and how he still led and how he still brought the locker room in to follow him. That's a beautiful thing because Brad thinks in all those terms. Brad's another person who has incredible emotional intelligence. As a GM in this league, you have to have awareness and you have to have emotional intelligence. Brad exhibits all of those things. He's incredible too.
Yeah, so this has been a great show for everyone involved. Last question. I know we got to wrap it up, but explain to the people that are out there about this whole Robert Saleh, because he's with the Packers now, and you said something I think a lot of people don't really realize until they've never been in the league. So I know I kind of know it, but just explain it for like in vague terms to the people about Robert Saleh going to the Packers in a fluid role.
Yeah, I mean, first thing you have to realize is he was the best man in Matt LaFleur's wedding. So both the guys that both grew up in Michigan, they were GAs at Central Michigan together under Brian Kelly. They lived together. They were roommates. So he's literally Saleh staying with LaFleur right now at his house with him and his wife Bree in Green Bay. So right when he got let go, then Matt reached out, obviously, just as a friend. That's typically what happens in this league. I still do the same thing when I see news and I'm texting guys or calling guys. You take care of your people, you take care of your friends, because you got to realize this is a person business first. A guy lost his job. Yeah, he's making great money as a head coach, but he has 7 kids. They're going to have to move. I mean, you're pulling kids away from friends, away from schools. Those are the things that go through your head just being in the business and being in the league. But Matt reached out, and from what I haven't talked to Matt this week, so I have not asked him, but I saw the one presser, and he was like, I tried to tell him, go to a beach, go vacation. And he said Saleh basically didn't listen to him. But knowing how Saleh is, we interviewed Saleh for the head coaching job, and I was at our owner's house. So I did all of our interviews when we hired Sirianni. Saleh was one, and I was calling Matt to get inside with him. So I've done research on this guy. I got to know him through that process. He's a great guy, and I know Matt. I've known Matt for years. He's an awesome guy too. He called him and basically said, hey, if you're bored, come on in, man. I would love you to just look under the hood and help us see some different perspectives. So that's basically what's going on. But when you get relieved, you basically get your contract is still typically guaranteed as a head coach. So he's still going to get paid by the Jets. And then this is basically kind of like a low stress consulting role to where it sounds like he's going to work for a couple days a week and then fly back to be with his family and enjoy that time. So seems like a good situation for Robert. Seems like a good situation for LaFleur. Both of them are friends, but that's the cool part of the business, I guess. You see some cool developments like that to where people are helping each other and just trying to do the right thing.
It's good to know, and I think a lot of people were asking questions about it, especially when I posted on the page, or it was something in the group, one of my groups or whatever. But it's interesting to know. But it's been a great conversation with you. And honestly, like I learned a lot from this conversation, and we did have some good talks about the concussion protocol, Hutchinson, the JMO situation. I think a lot of people are going to go back and they're going to enjoy this because it was. I mean, I could speak. Mark, you could say the same thing. Like it was really a good conversation we had.
Yeah, man, this was an excellent conversation. Just getting the insight from a guy like Ted, that's really fruitful. Just to get that kind of knowledge, like, and then you'll be able to talk about it on other podcasts with your friends and stuff like that. Just get a little more insight on it, man. It was very knowledgeable, man, and I really appreciate it, bro.
No, I really appreciate it. I appreciate the questions. It was a great conversation, Mark, Joe. I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
thank you for coming on. And where's Darcy? Is Darcy gonna pop up?
Man, I appreciate
I think Darcy rolled.
No. I'm producer.
Usually you come on at the end.
I'm the coach on the sideline.
I wasn't sure where you went.
At all the
Yeah,
tape.
we were trying to say bye.
Here, let me finish off with Glover Quinn. You were with Glover Quinn?
I GQ. Yep.
Okay, Glover was on this show. If you text him and say we want him back here, let's finish off with that.
But I would say Detroit changed a lot. Even in my time there, it changed a lot. Dan Gilbert came out. He bought a lot of different things. He changed downtown. They made downtown safer, probably one of the safest.
Thank you for everybody coming on. It was an awesome show. I learned so much, Ted. Thanks, Ted. Ted, you're awesome.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure. I appreciate it, guys.
It's hard to produce and do this. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for not picking me up going to the tunnel when I was trying to hitchhike.
You're gonna never let me live that one down, bro.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Please subscribe
Appreciate
to
it,
the
guys.
Detroit Lions News Show, Orms Forum, Detroit Lions News Podcast. And Ted, I need your information so next time I can promote it. What's your YouTube? What's your YouTube?
At Ted Rath, strength coach.
All right.
On all social. Yep.
All right. What's one pride, baby?